Alright, I get asked quite often how on earth I became a Buffalo Bills fan. Living in Texas, being born and raised on Long Island, which is like the land of the Giants and Jets. So I feel like it might be time to share that story. And in that story is going to be some craziness, some things you may not know, things that you might find disappointing. But fuck it, this is like my memoirs. We never know how much time we have left. So leaving little nuggets, little truths about yourself for everyone else to see, that's fun. Let's get into it. All right, the very first football game I ever remember watching was Super Bowl 21 between the Denver Broncos and the New Jersey Giants. This Super Bowl was from the 1986 season, but played in January of 1987. That made me 9 years old. Yeah, I'm an old bastard. Now, being on Long Island, everybody was a Giants fan. Everybody was rooting for the Giants in this game. So me, being 9 years old, I wanted to be different, so I rooted for the Denver Broncos. Plus, I really like that bright orange in their uniforms. Fantastic. So as far back as I can remember, the first team I actually ever rooted for were the Denver Broncos. Now, my father grew up being a New York Jets fan. Yes, you heard me right. I said New York Jets. But listen. When the Jets moved out of New York and into New Jersey with the Giants, my father, being a truck driver from Long Island, New York, hating the state of New Jersey for everything that it is, decided to stop being a Jets fan and claiming that the Buffalo Bills were the only New York team in the NFL. Now, I'll be honest, my father wasn't the biggest of football fans, but he stuck by his guns on this point. Now, right around 1989-ish, the Buffalo Bills drafted a gentleman by the name of Thurman Thomas. You might have heard of him. Together with a quarterback named Jim Kelly, my father had a little bit of excitement for the Buffalo Bills. Now, that being said, my father was also a very cheap man, and I don't even know if there was a way to watch out-of-market games like there is today, the Sunday ticket. It might have existed back then, but there was no way my father was paying for that. So every Sunday, I was forced to watch the Jets and Giants, if I even watched football, and I would get the scores on the bottom line, and when I would see the Denver Broncos, I'd get excited. Because my father was watching for the Buffalo Bills, I'd get excited when I'd see them too. By no means was I a die-hard NFL, Buffalo Bills, Denver Broncos fan at the age of 9, or even 10, 11, 12, and so forth. In high school, everybody had starter jackets. I didn't have a starter jacket. I wasn't allowed to have a starter jacket. I got the generic version. There was a company called Chalkline, and they made sports jackets that were like the generic version of starter. I was allowed to have one of those. And what kind of jacket did I get? A Denver Broncos jacket. Now, we're talking about a freshman in high school here, right? Very impressionable. All my friends watched football, loved football. I had a friend who was a Redskins fan. I had a friend who was a Colts fan, a Steelers fan, a Falcons fan. None of these kids watched every game. Nobody did. The only people in my area, my friends, people I associated with that watched every game were either Jets fans or Giants fans. And truth be told, that made up probably around 75 to 80% of the kids in my school. So seeing that I was a fan of the Denver Broncos and I had a liking for the Buffalo Bills because of my father, they were out-of-market teams, so I didn't watch these teams. I wasn't as big of an NFL fan as I was, say, with baseball and the Yankees. Now, as you may know, in the early 90s, the Buffalo Bills started dominating the AFC. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls. So when the playoffs came around, I was able to watch them, and I was converted. My father had succeeded in converting me to a Buffalo Bills fan. But if you ask my friends from middle school, from early years in high school, they remember me being a Broncos fan. When you are not committed to something 100%, like I was with the NFL, with the Bills and Broncos, you teeter-totter. Now, that directly contradicts my passion for the Buffalo Bills right now. Back then, there was no commitment. I teeter-tottered back and forth between the Broncos and Bills, 100%. The Buffalo Bills went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row in the 90s. I was in high school for those games. I will tell you, the moment that I clicked and became a 100% Buffalo Bills fan. Now, pay attention, because later in the story, this is going to be crazy. In the 1991 season, the Buffalo Bills faced the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship game. The game occurred in January of 1992. By this time, my father had succeeded in making me a Buffalo Bills fan. So when this game started, I was rooting for the Buffalo Bills. Late in the game, the Bills were up 10-0. It was a defensive struggle. I remember this game so well. At the end of this game, the Broncos quarterback, playing for an injured John Elway, Gary Kubiak, I know you know that name, ran the ball into the end zone on a 3-yard run to make the score 10-7. This was a crazy game. Now, late in the fourth quarter, what comes next after this? An onside kick. In the very limited time of watching the NFL, I had never seen an onside kick ever get recovered. And that's exactly what happened. The Broncos recovered an onside kick. It's 1992. I am 14 years old. I am a child. I've never seen an onside kick recovered, so I jumped up with excitement and screamed. I'll tell you, my dad was not happy. Oops. When the Bills win this game and go to the Super Bowl, you are not allowed to root for them. You're a Broncos fan? I thought you were a Bills fan. Yeah, he had a point. I felt terrible. Now, after the Broncos recovered this onside kick, they started moving down the field. A short pass over the middle to a guy named Steve Sewell, a running back. Fumbled the ball. Bills hopped on it. Bills won the game. Bills go to the Super Bowl. At the end of this game, I promised my father and myself that I am 100% on board with the Buffalo Bills moving forward. From that day on, I did not flip-flop. I was a Bills fan. Now, nothing changed in life. We still didn't have the Sunday ticket. We didn't have a way of watching out-of-market games. So while the Bills went on to go to 2 more Super Bowls, I still didn't watch regular season games. I was only able to watch when they were on Monday Night Football, when they played the Jets in the playoffs. But from that moment on, all my sports shirts were Buffalo Bills related. Now fast forward to after I graduate high school. I'm in my late teens, my early 20s. I'm working, I'm hanging out with friends. Football is not an every Sunday thing like it is to me nowadays. It wasn't until I turned 21 that I was able to go to the bars and actually be able to watch every game. I will tell you, and this will surprise a lot of people, the very first season I was able to go to the bars and watch every single Buffalo Bills game was the 2000 season. This was the very season after the Music City Miracle against the Tennessee Titans. This is also the very first season of the 18-year drought where the Buffalo Bills did not make the playoffs. I, at one point, thought that I was cursing them by watching every single game. I swear to you that this is not an exaggeration. I can count on one hand how many games I have missed since 2000. Whether it having to be the best man in a wedding, whether it being that I had to go to a family event for my wife, there has literally been 4 games since 2000 that I did not watch every snap. So while it might be shocking that I didn't become a true, diehard, hardcore fan like most of my friends until the year 2000, I promise you, I've been that since. So the 4 years where they went to the Super Bowl, when they had the greatest comeback in history, the Music City Miracle, I was a fan. But I wasn't a fan. Isn't that fucking crazy? Anyway, let's get back to this craziness, all right? Check this out. 18 years, the Buffalo Bills do not make the playoffs. They finally make the playoffs in 2017. Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback, but it's the Bills defense that leads them to the playoffs. Sean McDermott, new head coach. 18, they draft Josh Allen. They miss the playoffs in his first year. 2019, they go to the playoffs and lose to the Texans. And then comes 2020, and this is where it gets weird. The 2020 season, the COVID year, nobody in the stands. The Buffalo Bills were having their best season in the 21st century. They were winning big games. They were actually playing on primetime. It's been like 20 years since this shit has happened. There was a Sunday night game where the Bills played the Pittsburgh Steelers. Huge game. This was when the Steelers started off like 11-1. At one point, Ben Roethlisberger threw an interception, returned for a pick 6 by Taron Johnson of the Buffalo Bills. I remember this moment so vividly in my mind for multiple reasons. This interception led to the Buffalo Bills beating the Steelers on Sunday Night Football, gaining them some respect in the national media. It was looking like the Buffalo Bills were going to the playoffs again, maybe even win the division for the first time in 25 years. This pick 6 was huge. What made it even bigger was after this game was over and the Bills got the win and I went to sleep. A little after midnight, I got a phone call from my brother. My brother let me know that our father had passed away. In having the conversation with my brother, he told me the time of death, when he actually passed away. And after working it out in my head, it made me realize that he passed away right around the time that Taron Johnson had the pick six, and I was literally going apeshit with my son in my living room. So while I was in pure NFL ecstasy, Buffalo Bills heaven with my son, my father was dying. Now, I apologize for being a Debbie Downer. It's not what I meant to do. It's just important for the rest of the story. The following weekend, my wife and my two youngest sons drove up to New York because it was COVID, very difficult to fly, especially with young children. So we drove up to New York for the services for my father. So the services for my father were held on one day, on a Saturday. There was a service in the afternoon and one in the evening. Now, it just so happens that the Buffalo Bills were playing on that Saturday. They were one of the games that they chose to play on a Saturday. Now, it worked out that the game started moments after the first service ended with my dad. So we went back to my mother's house. I was able to watch the game. Priorities, right? And by the time the game ended, we had gone back for the night service from my father. Now, here's the crazy shit. I can't think about this without getting goosebumps and the hair on my neck raising. In this game that the Bills played on a Saturday afternoon, they got the win. They clinched the AFC East for the first time in 25 years. Truly gave new meaning to the whole Buffalo Bills phrase, just one before I die. Now, you ready for this? Who did the Buffalo Bills play in 2020 on a Saturday to clinch the AFC East? Perfectly placed in between the two services of my father's wake. The Denver Broncos. The very team that I teeter-tottered between and had my father look me dead in the face and tell me, you need to choose right now between the Buffalo Bills and Denver Broncos, or I don't want you rooting for the Bills ever again. The Denver Broncos. You can't make this shit up. Now, for the people that know me, like truly know me, they know that I had a difficult relationship with my father. We didn't really have a lot in common. The only thing we ever really discussed in depth were the New York Yankees and sometimes football, sometimes the Buffalo Bills. Because truth be told, although he converted me to a Bills fan, my father didn't really watch the Bills unless they were on TV. He didn't really watch football like I watch football. He would watch it in passing if it happened to be on Sundays, but he'd rather watch the Yankees. Now, that being said, I don't enjoy being in the room at an open coffin wake. I never have. I was scarred as a kid when my aunt passed away. I don't like it. If a friend of mine has a family member pass away, or if a family member passes away, I'll go. I'll show my respect, but I purposely don't go in the room, and if I do go in the room, I go nowhere near the casket. I don't know if that's disrespectful. It's just something that I can't do. That being said, in the afternoon service, I did not go up to see my father. I didn't. In the evening service, I did not do that again. However, when it was all over and everyone exited the room, I made sure to be the final person in that room. And with no one watching, I ripped the back page out of one of the pamphlets that they had. I drew a Buffalo Bills logo, and yes, I can draw it on command, on cue, 1,000 times over. I wrote 2020 AFC East champions, and in quotations I wrote, just one before I die. I took that paper and laid it right around here on my father. I said goodbye, go Bills, and I made peace with it. Because if the Buffalo Bills were one of the only things that linked me with my father, I wanted to make sure that that was represented in the time, in the place. Just one before I die. I'm getting older. The Buffalo Bills are actually playing well. I don't want my kids to have to do something similar that I did with my dad. If there was a way to make a deal with the devil that the Buffalo Bills win a Super Bowl before I die, sign me up, let's go. I'm sure you think I'm crazy for that. I'm here to tell you, I'm all right with that.